Radio waves never die. They just travel forever into the void. But sometimes they bounce back. For 60 years, amateur radio enthusiasts across America have tuned in to mysterious frequencies known as numbers stations, ghostly channels that broadcast nothing but static and buzzing tones, and a synthesized voice reading random strings of numbers. The FCC calls them atmospheric anomalies. The CIA calls them obsolete. Both are lying. The stations are still active, and tonight, for the first time in 40 years, the broadcast has changed. It stopped reading numbers. It started reading names. Part 1. The Dead Zone. Location: Blackwood County, North Dakota. Date: October 12, 2024. Jack Miller wasn't looking for secrets. He was looking for a break in the fiber optic line. As a senior lineman for Great Plains Telecom, his job was to fix internet outages in the freezing winds of the Dakotas. A massive blizzard had snapped a utility pole on a remote stretch of Route 52, miles from the nearest town. Jack climbed the icy rungs of the pole, his breath steaming in the spotlight of his truck below. He found the snapped fiber line, but he also found something else. Embedded deep inside the wooden pole, concealed under decades of weathering, was a secondary cable. It wasn't fiber. It was thick, shielded copper wire, dating back to the 1960s. It wasn't on any schematic Jack had ever seen. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. Jack pulled out his test set, a butt set used to listen for dial tones. He clipped the alligator clamps onto the strange copper wire. He expected silence. Instead, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Buzz, buzz, buzz. And then a woman's voice, automated, emotionless. Yankee, Oscar, Sierra. The sleeper wakes. I repeat, the sleeper wakes. Jack froze. This wasn't a phone line. This was a broadcast, and it was coming from under the ground. Part 2. The List. Jack sat in his truck, the heater blasting, recording the audio on his phone. The voice continued. Target designation, Echo 9. Status, active. Location, 47.9 degrees north, 101.3 degrees west. Jack pulled up the GPS on his work tablet. He typed in the coordinates. The pin didn't drop on a military base or a government bunker. It dropped on a farmhouse just 3 miles down the road. The farmhouse belonged to Mr. Henderson. Jack knew Mr. Henderson. He was a 70-year-old retired school teacher who grew prize-winning pumpkins and waved at every car that passed. The idea that Henderson was a target or an asset was laughable. But then the voice on the line changed its pattern. Activation code. The orchard burns at midnight. Execute protocol 89. The line went dead. Jack looked at his watch. It was 11:45 p.m. He shouldn't have done it. He should have driven back to the depot. But the fear in his gut was replaced by a gnawing suspicion. He put the truck in gear and turned off his headlights. He drove slowly down the snowy road toward the Henderson farm. Part 4. The Trace. Jack scrambled back to his truck, his heart hammering against his ribs. This wasn't just espionage. This was a terror attack on U.S. soil, orchestrated by a man who had lived here for 40 years. A sleeper agent who had just been activated by an underground wire. Jack fumbled with his keys. He dropped them. They clattered on the floor mat. Click. The sound of a gun safety being disengaged behind him. Jack froze. He looked in the rearview mirror. Sitting in the back seat of his truck was a woman. She was wearing a Great Plains Telecom uniform, but he had never seen her at the depot. She held a pistol steady at the back of his head. "You tapped the line, Jack," she said softly. Her accent was American, but the cadence was wrong. "You weren't supposed to find the copper network. That line has been buried since the Cuban Missile Crisis." "Who are you?" Jack stammered. "I'm the line supervisor," she said with a humorless smile. "And you just heard the retirement order." "I won't tell anyone," Jack pleaded. "I swear." "I know you won't, because nobody believes in conspiracy theories anymore, Jack. That's why they work so well. But we can't take risks." She tightened her finger on the trigger. Suddenly, Jack's phone, still connected to the truck's Bluetooth, crackled. The recording he had made earlier started playing loudly through the speakers. "Buzz, Buzz, Yankee, Oscar, Sierra." The woman flinched, distracted for a split second by the sound of the number station. Jack didn't hesitate. He threw his body backward, slamming the driver's seat into her. The gun went off, shattering the windshield. Jack elbowed her in the face, scrambled out of the truck, and ran into the blinding snowstorm. Behind him, the orchard was burning. Ahead of him lay miles of frozen darkness. Jack Miller was alone in the dead zone, with the knowledge of a biological attack that was hours away, and an enemy that could be anyone: your neighbor, your boss, your friend. The frequency had gone silent, but the nightmare had just begun. Part 5. The Whiteout. The North Dakota wind cuts through skin like a serrated knife. Jack Miller ran blindly into the white void of the blizzard, his boots sinking deep into the drifts. He didn't look back. He didn't have to. He could hear the crunch of boots behind him, slow, rhythmic, relentless. The assassin wasn't running. She was hunting. Jack knew these fields. He knew that half a mile east lay the old Burlington Northern train tracks, raised on a gravel embankment. If he could reach the other side, the wind shear might cover his tracks. He slid down a frozen ravine, gasping for air, his lungs burning from the cold. He huddled beneath a concrete culvert, shivering uncontrollably. Above him, he saw the beam of a flashlight slicing through the snow. "You can't outrun the cold, Jack," the woman's voice carried over the wind. "Come back to the truck. We can make this quick." Jack clutched his phone. The screen was cracked, battery at 12%. He had the recording, the evidence of the bioterror attack planned for dawn. But who could he call? The woman wore a telecom uniform. If the Majestic Group controlled the phone lines, calling 911 would just triangulate his position for them. He needed a way to broadcast the truth that they couldn't intercept. He needed to go analog. Part 6. The Dead Exchange. Jack waited until the flashlight beam moved west. Then he scrambled up the embankment. He wasn't heading for town. He was heading for Hut 4. In the telecommunications world, a hut is a small concrete bunker in the middle of nowhere that houses the junction points for long-distance cables. Most were modernized with fiber optics, but Jack knew Hut 4 still had the old copper legacy systems, the POTS, or plain old telephone service lines that connected the emergency broadcast relays. He reached the hut, a gray tombstone in the snow. The door was locked with a heavy padlock. Jack grabbed a rusted piece of rebar from the ground and smashed the lock with a desperate, feral strength. One blow, two. The hasp snapped. He tumbled inside, slamming the heavy steel door shut and barring it with the rebar. The room smelled of ozone and stale dust. Rows of ancient circuit boards hummed with low voltage. "Okay," Jack whispered, his hand shaking as he pulled a pair of alligator clips from his pocket. "Let's see if this old girl can still sing." He didn't want to make a call. He wanted to hijack the system. He located the trunk line labeled EAS_relay_Bismarck, Emergency Alert System. If he could splice his phone's audio output into this line, he could override every radio and TV in the county with the recording of Henderson's confession. Part 7. The Override. Jack stripped the wires with his teeth, tasting copper and blood. He twisted the leads of his headphone jack onto the EAS terminal. He plugged the jack into his cracked phone. Thud. A heavy impact shook the steel door. The assassin had found him. Thud. "Open the door, Jack!" she screamed. "You have no idea what you are meddling with! Protocol 89 is necessary!" Jack ignored her. He tapped the play button on the recording of Henderson saying, "The payload is ready. The water supply in Bismarck will be contaminated by dawn." He set the phone to loop. Then, he jammed a screwdriver into the override circuit breaker. Sparks showered down on him. The room filled with the shrill, ear-piercing screech of the emergency alert tone. Screech! It was working. Across North Dakota, in warm living rooms and late-night diners, TVs flickered, radios cut out. The screech was followed by the looped audio of the traitor Henderson. The door hinges began to buckle. She was shooting the lock off. Jack looked around. There was no back exit. He was trapped in a concrete box with a pissed-off assassin and a circuit board that was starting to smoke. Part 8. The Spark. The door flew open. The assassin stood there, silhouetted by the snow, her pistol raised. "Turn it off!" she roared, stepping into the room. Jack looked at the sparking wires, then at a canister of contact cleaner spray, highly flammable, sitting on the shelf next to the high-voltage transformer. "You said you were the supervisor," Jack said, grabbing the can. "Then you should know about safety hazards." He sprayed the aerosol directly into the sparking transformer. Boom! A fireball erupted in the small room. The explosion threw Jack backward against the concrete wall, knocking the wind out of him. The assassin screamed as the flames engulfed the doorway, forcing her to retreat into the snow. The fire suppression halon system hissed to life, filling the room with white gas, extinguishing the fire but sucking out the oxygen. Jack crawled on the floor, coughing, dragging himself toward the door through the smoke. The assassin was gone, either fled or injured. He stumbled out into the snow, collapsing on the cold ground. In the distance, he heard sirens, lots of them. Police, fire, DHS. They weren't coming for him. They were heading toward the Henderson farm. The broadcast had worked. The water intake would be shut down. The city was safe. Jack lay there, watching the snow fall on his burning face. His phone, still inside the burning hut, had melted, taking the Shadow Dossier file with it. But the signal had gone out. Epilogue: The Static. Date: 3 days later. Location: a motel in Montana. Jack Miller watched the news on a grainy TV. Authorities have apprehended a domestic terror cell in North Dakota. The contamination attempt was thwarted thanks to an anonymous hack of the emergency alert system. The suspect, identified as Arthur Henderson, was found dead in his home from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Jack turned off the TV. They killed Henderson to silence him. Jack went to the window. He wasn't a lineman anymore. He was a ghost. He looked at the new burner phone he had bought with cash. He had downloaded a frequency scanner app. He tuned it to the old frequency he had found in the pole. Buzz, buzz. The voice returned. Yankee, Oscar, Sierra. Target Echo 9 compromised. Initiating search for the lineman. Status: hunt. I repeat, status, hunt. Jack smiled grimly and pulled the curtains closed. Come and find me, he whispered. End of file. Number 893. Closed.